Okay, so I did want to go over the endocrine system. So the endocrine system, they have a nervous system, and nervous system controls the body immediately. It creates immediate responses, and nerve impulses travels to the neuron. So in order for the body to receive information from the nervous system, it has to be connected to the neuron. It's kind of like electrical, housing, like wiring. Well, an endocrine system is slower, but it spreads widespread communication. So it is similar to if a message is being sent from an endocrine, it will be sent to a lot of parts. It's kind of like a mail system, right? So when you send out mail, it sends out to different houses that have mailboxes, and you could think of mailboxes as receptors. And we have so you have cells that are part of the endocrine system and they secrete hormones into the cardiovascular system. The hormones travel through the blood throughout your body and dissolve out of blood into the interstitial fluid. If a cell has a receptor that matches that hormone, that cell will be able to respond to that. So, upregulation is hormones will stimulate cells with proper receptors. Some cells can control how many hormone receptors they have, and some become sensitive over time. While downregulation is removing receptors. So hormones maintain homeostasis throughout the body, and they can work through negative or positive feedback. Okay, so let's talk about the so hormones are chemical messengers sent out through blood. So they circulate through the bloodstream and they dissolve out of the bloodstream into interstitial fluid. This happens at a slower rate than the nervous system. And it has to have specific target cells with receptors. So it has to have a matching hormone receptor with it. Okay. And then we also have hormone classification by chemical structure. So first we have the amino acid derivative. These are hormones from loose amino acids. So there are subunit that makes up the hormones and they so, individual amino acids can act as hormones, but sometimes the body will modify them slightly. So, some examples could be, epinephrine, norepinephrine, histamines. So, anything with an INE, right? INE is an indicator that it's going to have, um, amino acid, right? So we have lipid derivatives. These are let's go to peptide. Sorry, guys. So peptides, they are shorter chains of amino acids. They're larger. They move just slower through the body. Some examples can be oxytocin, human growth hormone, insulin, and they can be referred as the protein hormones. And lipid derivatives, so they're hydrophobic. They can't dissolve in water, so they are common hormones, and they have to act very locally, meaning they have to act on the cell that they secrete. It doesn't travel far because they have a hard time traveling in blood, and they are locally acting hormones. While steroid hormones, um, they travel easily through the bloodstream. There are going to be globulin proteins in plasma that help carry those away. So steroid hormones, they're kind of like they relate to cholesterol, right? So it has four carbon rings. So it's like, like steroids to oh sorry, it's like testosterone, which is kind of like, it's kind of like it has something to do with steroids, right? Okay, moving on. We have all endocrine glands are ductless. They don't have tubes to squirt things, so they secrete hormones directly into the interstitial fluid, blood, or lymph. And exocrine glands, they secrete substance on the outside, and these have ducts and tubes. So some common endocrine glands are the pituitary gland, the thyroid, the parathyroid, the adrenal, the pineal, the kidneys, the heart, stomach, small intestines. And we have hypothalamus, right? So hypothalamus is the homeostatic control center in your brain. It maintains homeostasis, so make sure that everything is functioning in normal ranges. So the pituitary gland actually secretes 9 different hormones, and it hangs from a stalk of like a little funnel thing, right? So these so posterior and anterior is a little bit different. So okay, so let's start with interior, right? Anterior is larger. It's connected to the hypothalamus by the hypophyseal portal system. It has two capillary beds connected by veins. And they are important because the hypothalamus tells the hypothalamus makes hormones into capillary beds and it sends to anterior pituitary gland. And the hormones released by hypothalamus are releasing hormones and inhibiting hormones. And with the pituitary, these are connected to hypothalamus by neurosecretory cells. The posterior pituitary secrete just so okay, let me explain it in like kind of like simpler words so you guys like let me find it for you. Mm, okay, so anterior pituitary creates hormones that it releases. It releases hormones in response to the ones in blood. So they're kind of like trophic hormones. They trigger different endocrine glands to release their hormone. While pituitary, they store some of the hormones, and the hypothalamus produces. So the hypothalamus produces. It doesn't make its own hormones. Okay, so intuitory. Let's go through the different types. We have yeah. So what I was saying. It goes to different endocrine glands, right? And tells them to when to release the hormone. And the hypothalamus releases hormones that tells anterior pituitary when to secrete. So the adrenal cortex hormone, it talks to adrenal gland and it tells the cortex to glucocorticoids, glucocorticoids, right? Okay. So we're starting with this one. So the hypothalamus thinks that anterior pituitary needs to stimulate the adrenal gland. It will secrete a hormone called corticotrophin releasing hormone. And the corticotrophin releasing hormone will come to the anterior pituitary and tell the anterior pituitary to secrete a androcorticotropic hormone, which goes down to adrenal gland to release glucocorticoid hormone, FSH. So works on the gonads of males and females. It stimulates egg and sperm development. And we have HGH, human growth hormone. This is a wide-ranging hormone. It triggers every cell in the body to grow, and it tells every cell to make a hormone called insulin. So it stimulates general growth by stimulating cell growth and cell division. It stimulates body to break adipose tissue, and it yeah. And we have LH. This works on the gonads. In females, it triggers ovulation of or release of eggs and formation of corpus lucidum, which is the leftover structure after ovulation to release estrogen. And so it leaves the anterior pituitary, goes to the ovaries and testes and stimulates them to release more hormones. We have MSH, which is the melanocytes in the brain eye. It triggers brain activity and melanin production by melanocytes. And people who kind of oversecrete this kind of have like darker skin. We have prolactin, this creates milk, and we have THH that goes to the thyroid gland to secrete its hormone. Pituitary disorders, gigantism. So when you have an overproduction of HGH during childhood, so your bones will lengthen and widen tremendously. So you grow taller, you look proportionally taller, but it looks normal. So let's do it to the pituitary gland. This one stores hormones that the hypothalamus produces by neurosecretory cells. So let's start with oxytocin. This is what stimulates the uterine contraction of birth and release of milk. It's also secreted during sexual pleasure. The ADH, antidiuretic hormone, this one reduces water loss and increases blood pressure. It also tells your sweat glands to stop sweating out water and tries to keep in the water. We have different parts of the thyroid, right? So we have the thyroid gland, and this one has 2 to 3 lobes. So you have two types of cells. You have the follicular cells and the perifollicular cells. Follicular cells, they line the follicles are filled with substance referred as a colloid. And it has the tritaurin, and a thyroxine. And they're like simple colloidal epithelium. While the parafollicular, it's in between follicular cells. The cytoplasm looks clear, the cells, and it has calcitonin, which stimulates osteoblasts to store calcium in bone. So you have a decreased blood calcium levels, your hypothalamus will notice, and then it will store, and then you the hypothalamus notices you have a lot of calcium blood from food, so it triggers the thyroid gland to secrete calcitonin so that you can quickly store away the calcium away in bones. Okay, so there are some thyroid disorders, like we have hypothyroidism, which is the undersecretion of thyroid hormones, so it can cause cretinism, which happens during childhood. So if a child does not secrete enough, the body would not develop properly. And basically, it's important for BMR, ATP production because it takes a lot of energy to build a body. And we have Medexna. It's an adult onset hyperthyroidism. It's an autoimmune disorder that destroys your thyroid gland, or something is triggering your thyroid gland to not secrete the hormone anymore. We have Graves' disease. It's when the person produces antibodies that mimics the THH. So the thyroid sees the THH and thinks the THH is coming from the anterior pituitary. So it's constantly secreting thyroid hormones. So if you constantly secrete, BMR is still high. So you get skinny, you get edema, and then yeah. So parathyroid glands. So behind the thyroid glands are the parathyroid. You have two types. So you have the parathyroid cells and the oxyphilic cells. Parathyroid cells have large nuclei. They release PTH, increase blood calcium, and you need the calcium for nerves to send action potentials and your muscles to contract. The oxyphil cells, they have more cytoplasm. The nucleus look more rounded, and yeah. So let's go through the adrenal gland hormones. Okay, there's quite a few. Okay, so it's gonna be take some time to memorize them all, but so in the adrenal cortex, right? We have the mineral cortex, which is a larger category of hormones that help with mineral and ion homeostasis, like uh, uh aldosterone. We have the glucocorticoids that maintain glucose homeostasis. It's like cortisol, and it regulates metabolism, rate of protein breakdown, and rate of lipid breakdown. It's important for stress. So when you get stressed, a lot of glucocorticoids are released. So you have like a lion chasing you. It will cause your body to inhibit tissue repair and then slow down immune responses. But then it's gonna make your heart rate go up. So if a lion chases you, you don't want to be bothered, repairing a paper cut, right? So you want to focus on running away from the lion. But if you're stressed about school, you're gonna be flooded a lot of ATP, and it's gonna work against you, and you're gonna get sick. And if the body's flooded, it will increase the rate of cardiovascular diseases and diabetes. Okay, so we have questions. Oh, and androgens. Okay, this one is for steroid hormones. This one is for puberty. It's how changes in puberty. Mm. So adrenal medulla, right? The middle, it's helps with stress responses, and it helps enhance your sympathetic automatic nervous system. And it triggers fight and flight, and it dilates air out of for your lungs and stuff like that for efferin, norepinephrine. So it's good for short periods of time, like running away from a lion. But if your body's constantly flooding this, it can cause stress-related diseases. So we have the Cushing's disorder, which is the hypersecretion of cortisol from the adrenal cortex. So having a tumor on the adrenal gland, or if the anterior pituitary oversecretes, so symptoms is going to be breakdown of fat muscle, so it's going to make you look more round. So the anterior pituitary is oversecreting the ACTH. And then and Addison's disease is a hyposecretion. It's undersecreting glucocorticoids and aldosterone. It's an autoimmune disease where your body attacks your adrenal cortex, or your body prevents ACH from anterior pituitary from functioning properly. So your pancreas has some structures to it. It has your pancreatic acylin, which are little cells around. These are exocrine involved with the digestive system secreting pancreatic juice, and your pancreatic islets, which are the endocrine cells that secrete hormones into the cardiovascular system. So it's made up of four different cells, like the glucagon, which is secreted by alpha cells. It increases blood glucose sugar levels. Insulin, it secretes insulin to lower blood glucose levels. It tells your cells to transport glucose into them. And somatostatin inhibits all the other hormones that the pancreas secretes. So it's a slow nutrient absorption from GI tract, and the pancreatic polypeptide slows down GI tract and slows down the rate of the gallbladder and pancreas secreting fluid into the intestines. So, okay, let's talk about diabetes, okay? So, diabetes, it means problems with urine production. And diabetes mellitus is disorder of blood sugar, so inability to regulate glucose. So type 1 diabetes, right? It's an autoimmune disease that attacks the pancreas, so it can no longer produce insulin. So it's triggered by like genetic or environmental. So you have to treat it with the insulin injection. Well, type 2 is when your body stops responding to insulin because your pancreas is making insulin, but cells in your body does not bring in glucose as it should. So causes can be overeating, overindulging. So let's say you eat a lot of sugar, right? When you eat a lot of sugar, your body is going to be flooded with so much insulin, right? And then over time, it kind of like ignores the insulin over time. So yeah, so you just have like way too much sugar running around. Insulin's supposed to be with the sugar, right? But then there's too much of it. And so your body's like over secreting insulin down. Now insulin's getting ignored. So you have an over increase of blood sugar inside your system. So yeah, that is all.